Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jennifer Frost. I am the Public Affairs Manager here at Charlotte Water. Because I sit in this seat and in this role of Public Affairs, I talk about conservation and our water use programs a lot. So that's what we're going to cover today. Give you a little bit of information about that. We're going to talk about conservation really from a couple of different perspectives. We're going to talk about it from the customer perspective and customer programs. We're going to talk about Charlotte Water's operational practices, and I'm also going to touch a little bit on some of the capital investments that Charlotte Water's made when it comes to conservation. Another section of the presentation today is going to talk about drought management and what happens when Mother Nature is not working with us and working against us. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the water shortage management plan and the low inflow protocol that our Catawba Watery Basin has. What I hope that you get out of this presentation today is a better understanding of Charlotte Water's programs, how they work towards a sustainable water use for our entire community, our entire region, and talking about conservation, and really the principles that Charlotte Water operates under, which is that water use is minimized and water is not wasted. Those are the key principles that we operate with. All right, so let's dig in right away to our conservation programs. What I'd like to do is talk a little bit about some of the customer incentives, such as our tiered rate structure, some smart irrigation programs, and talk about education and outreach. I'll talk about the operational practices that we have, related to our distribution system, leak response, and talk about some of the exciting programs that we have around reclaimed water. And then I'll hit on those rehabilitation projects and upgrades, particularly at our water treatment plants. Those investments are helping us with conservation as well. So we'll dig into some of the details here. One of the largest customer incentive programs that we have when it comes to conservation is our tiered rate structure. And what that means is that the more a customer uses, the more each unit costs. Charlotte Water has 4 tiers for our volumetric rates. They are broken into tier 1 is at 1 to 4 CCF. 4 going up to 4th tier is up to 16 or more CCF. Now keep in mind, a CCF is about 750 gallons. And when you're operating as a customer in that tier 1 or tier 2, that's kind of your typical household use. So like, for example, my husband and I, we have a bill that runs us about 3 CCF each month for the most part. A household of maybe 4 or more folks, a family, with children, 3 or 4 children, that'll probably get you more in the tier 2 rate. So this tier 1 and tier 2 is what we call our typical household use. I mean, you can see that the tier 2 does have a percent increase over tier 1. But when we start to get into the atypical household use, so thinking irrigation, filling swimming pools, doing a lot of residential car washing, now you're starting to move into that tier 3 or 4, and the price of each unit goes up considerably. As a matter of fact, going from tier 2 to tier 3, the cost of each unit more than doubles. And this is a financial incentive for folks to stick with that typical household use and not move into those discretionary or atypical household uses. When you get up to 16 or more, when you're irrigating a lot, when you're filling your pool, topping it off frequently, again, the rate almost doubles between tier 3 and tier 4. This is a significant incentive to customers to really conserve water. One of the other conservation programs that we have at Charlotte Water, it started about 2 decades ago actually, is the Smart Irrigation Program. A smart irrigation, as you can imagine, the technology has evolved quite a bit, but we have a smart irrigation program that allows customers to purchase these controllers, these best of technology that really minimizes the watering demand when irrigating a lawn. These controllers, they're hooked to the internet, they have sensors in the ground, they look at soil conditions, plant material, weather predictions, take in a great deal of data, and then they only run the irrigation system based on what the data says and if the plant really needs it. And we can estimate that watering demand is reduced by almost 20% or more just by installing a smart irrigation program. Now, there is an expense to using this best-in-class irrigation program, but we think that customers will get a return on that investment through the incentives that we have financially. We have mandatory water restrictions won't apply if you're using a smart controller. So when we get into those time frames of low inflow, restrictions don't apply because these controllers are only using the bare minimum to keep the plant alive or the lawn alive. We also incentivize this program by waiving the capacity fees for the split service residential irrigation meter. Remember, an irrigation meter is required if you're going to install an irrigation system. And then here's the big one is we cap the irrigation rate at the tier 3 rates. If you are using a smart irrigation controller, you are using the bare minimum that's needed by using the water wisely and efficiently. And so the incentive there is that you'll get to pay the tier 3 rate. Now, there are some requirements for this program, not too burdensome, but there is an annual recertification to make sure that your system's working the way it's supposed to, it's still installed, you're still using it, and then, of course, all of our irrigation customers have to go through an annual backflow test. But this is something that we've had going on for, like I said, a couple of decades. The technology has evolved. Today, it's even better return when a customer installs one of these systems. One of the other things that we spend a lot of time doing is educating. And as the public affairs manager, it's my communications team that oversees this education and outreach about conservation. And we never just talk about conservation with one tool or with one audience. We use social media, bill inserts, website, blogs. We do student programs in the public and private school systems here. And we do a lot of public events throughout the year. And we'll take things like leak detection tablets, which are little tablets that a customer can drop in their toilet. And if the toilet's running or leaking, the bowl of water changes color so they can easily see if they have a leaky toilet. So we give out those tablets for free so that customers can think about ways that they're using water, thinking about water waste in their own home. And it kind of gets that mindset out there. We also offer like pilot programs for rebates. Back in 2013, we had a toilet rebate program that allowed people to get a rebate on their bill if they installed a low flow toilet. Believe it or not, these programs aren't terribly as popular as they used to be, mostly because a lot of our appliances and fixtures are getting to be water efficient already, which is great that the market has moved that way. But we still look at opportunities for any rebates or any pilot programs, especially with some of our neighbors in the community, whenever possible. Our conservation messages will hit on, the typical things like water use tips, but we also celebrate Fix a Leak Week, which is coming up here in March. And some of our messages will talk about native plants, how to choose and when to choose water smart appliances. And we partner with nonprofits in the community, like She Built the City, in order to teach folks how to DIY their own leak repairs, especially for those little things like toilet flapper, which can add up to a lot of cost on a bill, but is really an inexpensive fix if they know how to do it themselves. So we spend a lot of time talking about conservation with our community, particularly students. They're very popular with our student programs is talk about conservation too, which is great because then we're just raising the next generation of conservation-minded customers. Let me get into some of the operational practices that Charlotte Water has. And first and foremost is our leak detection and response. We have a 311 hotline in Mecklenburg County and in our service area. That hotline has more than 40 customer service representatives prepared to take Charlotte Water calls, including if someone reports a leak. So we get that phone number out to our community through our education and outreach so that when someone sees a leak, they can call and report it. What happens when that call comes in is that that same day, a technician will investigate. Sometimes it's not immediately, but it's within the same day. The idea is that that technician is going from um, investigation to investigation to see what the leak looks like. That technician can even attempt to repair it if possible. They keep equipment on their truck, and if it's something small that they can handle themselves, they will make that repair at that time. Most of the time, though, they have to triage it and prioritize it. And we're going to prioritize our leaks according to how urgent the leak is, how damaging is their public property being damaged, is their private property being damaged through the leak, is it something that we can schedule and handle in the next few days. And when we triage those and prioritize our leaks, we have an operational service level standard that goes with that leak. So that emergency leaks are repaired within 48 hours. And 48 hours is being generous. Most of the time, we're on it within the first 24 hours and get that emergency leak repaired. Most of our leaks, when we find them and they're reported, they end up going into that 5-day or sooner category. Emergencies are done really quickly, but the next tier down of prioritization is usually done within 5 days. In FY24, we repaired nearly 3,000 leaks in a system that's more than 4,600 miles long. So if you took all of the pipes, distribution pipes in Mecklenburg County, lined them all up, it would be the distance between here and Alaska. So it's a lot of pipe system, but there were about 3,000 last year between the miles of pipe and the nearly 332,000 water service connections that we have as well. Let me talk a little bit too about our distribution system. So those 4,200 miles of pipe that are out there, that's carrying our high quality drinking water. Our principle with our distribution system is to minimize water waste and avoid unnecessary flushing wherever possible. Unfortunately, fortunately, however you want to put it, maintaining high quality drinking water from time to time requires pipe flushing. It's something that all utilities do in order to maintain high quality drinking water. It does need to happen, especially at our farthest out reaches of our system where the water may get a little stagnant. Instead of just opening up a hydrant or opening up a flusher and just letting it run, Charlotte Water uses auto flushers, which are on timers, so that the water only needs to run for a certain prescribed period of time, no more, no less. The idea is to keep that drinking water quality high, keep the water from getting stagnant in the system. We flush the water, we shut off the flusher. We have a program right now to optimize those flushing protocols as well. We're looking at things like water quality sensors so that we can only keep that timer going for the minimum amount of time necessary to keep that water quality high. The other principle that we operate under is to return the water to the streams or the treatment system when possible. A few years back, we were working with the fire department, and it turns out that every engine in the fire department fleet has to test their engine, the pressures, the volume that they're using, and the way that they do that is to use a lot of water. And so we were talking with the fire department, and what we found is if we could create a testing bay at the Franklin Water Treatment Plant, the trucks could come to that plant, come to that testing bay, do the test that it was needed to keep their ISO certifications, and then that water would be able to go right back into the system so that we weren't wasting water, but the fire department could keep their compliance. Those are the kinds of partnerships that we seek in order to minimize water waste and avoid unnecessary water use. One of the most exciting programs that we've got going on at Charlotte Water is our reclaimed water program. Right now, that reclaimed water system is over near Mallard Creek wastewater treatment plant. It's the effluent that comes out of there. It's in our university area of Mecklenburg County, and it's also located in the Yadkin River Basin in Mecklenburg County. That reclaimed water is a partnership with the local golf course that's there and the UNC Charlotte campus. By North Carolina law, reclaimed water can really only be used for irrigation or some other non-potable uses, but that makes it perfect for irrigating the greens at a local golf course. And what that does is it reduces the need for potable water. We can take that effluent away from a wastewater treatment plant, pump it to the local golf course that's nearby, the university that's nearby, allow them a source of water that's not potable, that hasn't been highly treated, and it's win-win for both our partner and for the utility because we get to use that reclaimed water over and over again. Along those same lines, something that was really exciting about recycled water in the Charlotte water area this year is we created QC Water. It's a partnership with Town Brewing and Xylem Incorporated. QC Water is the reclaimed effluent water from the wastewater treatment plant. The one we're using right now is up near McDowell. We take that effluent, we run it through some additional filters thanks to our partners at Xylem. It polishes that water so that it's up to drinking water standards. We took the water to Town Brewing and they made this awesome pale ale out of the recycled water. It is a pilot program. It's the first of its kind in North Carolina and South Carolina, but it allows us to start that conversation within Mecklenburg County about what recycled water can be used for. What else can we use it for? How can we reduce the amount of potable water out there and take this effluent that we're already treating and polish it and see what else we can make? And Town Brewing did an awesome job making the beer. It went to the Queen City Brewers Festival and it actually won Best in Show. It's been really well received, and we're excited to continue to expand QC Water in the market and see what other products we can make besides beer. So more to come on this for sure. One of the other things that our customer service folks do is test for meter accuracy. You know, with 332,000 service connections in our system, we need to make sure that what we're metering, what we're measuring is accurate. AWWA has set an acceptable meter accuracy of between 98.5 and 101.5% accurate. At one of our facilities, at our Zone 2 facility, we have a setup there where we bench test a statistically significant sample of all meters that come to us from our manufacturer. This allows us to make sure that all the meters that our customers are using that are out in the field are within that acceptable meter accuracy. And again, this really helps us to measure how much water we're using and be efficient with the water that we have. Let me also talk a little bit about capital investments. You know, Charlotte Water has a robust capital investment program. And right now, in particular, we have a couple of projects going on at the Franklin Water Treatment Plant. These investments allow us to rehab or rehabilitate some of our facilities so that we can focus on efficiency. And one of the projects right now over at Franklin is a pump replacement. This will make those pumps as efficient as possible, make sure there's nothing leaky, and it will replace those. The other thing that we're doing at Franklin is adding more inline meters within the plant system. Again, meters help us measure how much water we're using so that we can improve that performance year over year. The other project that we have there is a backwash supply pumping station. we were in the process, we used to use potable water or finished water in order to backwash the filters at Franklin Water Treatment Plant. But we thought instead of using finished water, treated water, let's go ahead and do a recycled water within the plant. And so we've converted a small tank that already exists, and it's now going to be used as a backwash supply for doing those filters so that we're not using highly treated water or finished water for that process. Another way that we are trying to not waste water and use water as efficiently as possible. All right, I'm going to pivot for a little bit here and talk a little bit about what happens when what Mother Nature is not working with us and she's working against us when things get hot and get dry. And I want to talk a little bit about Charlotte Water's water shortage management plan and the low inflow protocol that our entire Catawba Watery Basin operates under. Charlotte Water's water shortage management plan is something that, like all local governments in the state of North Carolina, is required. This plan is what a utility or local government will pull up and execute when there are times of extreme or exceptional drought. Our water shortage management plan was written in 2003, but it's been updated 5 times since on a regular occurring frequency. The most important thing about the water shortage management plan is that it aligns with the low inflow protocol, and it outlines the logistics of what Charlotte will do, what Charlotte Water will do when we're observing that low inflow protocol. And it also aligns with our ordinance. So everything is codified through our city council as well. So these three tools, the water shortage management plan, the low inflow protocol, and our ordinance are all in lockstep so that when something like this happens, when there is a drought, when there is a water shortage, we have a plan that we can pull out and execute and know that we're working coordinated with the rest of the basin, which is where the low inflow protocol comes in. It was it is a protocol that is managed by the Drought Management Advisory Group. And I think even within the group on the call today, I think some of you all may be members of this Drought Management Advisory Group. It was established in 2006. There are more than 40 members in the DMAG. It's the public water suppliers in the basin. It is several large industrial users of the river. Both North Carolina and South Carolina agencies are in the DMAG, as well as the USGS, because they help us do a lot of the monitoring. And then, of course, Duke Energy, which is really how the DMAG and the LIP got, how they were created, because it was part of Duke Energy's relicensing or FERC relicensing, their energy generation relicensing process. And so this DMAG group oversees the low inflow protocol. What this protocol is a drought management plan. It sets conservation priorities for every single user across the basin when there are drought conditions. It prescribes actions so that we're all coordinated, and it outlines criteria for entering and exiting drought stages. This is really important so that we're all in lockstep. There's no ambiguity about what each of our utilities should be doing as we move through these drought stages, and we've all agreed on these actions together. And of course, the LIP calls for all the members to maintain an implementation plan so that when the LIP is enacted, that protocol is in being implemented, everyone has a plan. And of course, Charlotte Waters is that water shortage management plan I was talking about. So what does the LIP call for? Essentially, what it does is it takes a look at the storage index, the drought monitor, which is a North Carolina drought tool, looks at soil moisture, looks at temperature. And so the drought monitor is created by the state of North Carolina. And so we look at the storage index of the river and the lakes, the drought monitors generated by the state of North Carolina, and then also with our partner USGS, we look at stream flow gauges because the stream flow gauges are what feeds the river. So if the storage index and the drought monitor are starting to degrade, or the storage index and the USGS stream flow gauges, if they're starting to degrade and condition over time, we will start moving into different stages of the low inflow protocol. Here's an example of what that kind of looks like. This was the trigger status summary for July 1st, 2015. So not last year, a few years back when we were actually moving into stage 0, stage 1 at that time. As you can see from the screen, the first column is the reservoir storage. And at that time, on July 1st of 2015, our river and lake storage was at 93% of capacity. So that had started us to move into stage 0. Also was a trigger was the fact that our stream flow, which is that second column, that had also started to decrease. It was at 79% of the capacity of over 6-month average of those streams that all feed into the river. So because of those two things, we're starting to move into stage 0. We announced as a basin and enacted the LIP so that all of us would move into stage 0 and then continue to monitor how does this going to change over the next few months. And so every month we would look at the triggers again and decide whether or not we are still in the same stage or escalating into a worse stage. What happens when we move into those stages? Again, collectively, there are performance goals. And when we get into stage 1, what that means is that each member of the DMAG is going to work to reduce overall water use by 3 to 5%. And the way that we're going to do that is to voluntarily ask our customers, our users, to reduce those discretionary water uses. And as you can see, as you move into different drought stages, the performance, the reductions that we're asking for, the percentage reductions, those increase. And then some of those water uses move from voluntary to mandatory, and they escalate in who is being asked to do this. So for example, discretionary water uses. At the beginning, we're going to ask people, voluntarily, can you reduce your discretionary water uses? Those are going to be things like irrigating turf of personal property, fountains, and decorative use of water. Please don't fill or refill your pools and reduce commercial or vehicle washing. Non-commercial car and vehicle washing. That's what we consider discretionary. Then as we move into mandatory, those discretionary uses become prohibited. And the community and the business, those discretionary uses start to kick in. And we ask for example, nurseries to reduce the watering that they'll do. We ask car washing that are commercial car washes, we ask them to reduce their use, and so on and so forth. And so as we move through those stages, things move from voluntary to mandatory, and more of the community and more of the services that depend on water are reduced until we can meet those performance goals. And the beauty of it is that we're all in lockstep together. In conclusion, what I hope that you've learned from this presentation is that Charlotte Water has a lot of programs in place to minimize water use and loss. Conservation programs are important. They can help with water use, but they can't prevent the need to provide water to different areas of the service system. Conservation is a system-wide program. Charlotte Water's programs ensure sustainable water use as well as conservation during periods of reduced supply. So again, our principles of water use is minimized, water is not wasted. Those are all in effect. We are glad to be part of the Drought Management Advisory Group. When we all work together, those programs for the low inflow protocol are coordinated basin wide, and they prescribe a escalating set of voluntary and mandatory practices that we all adhere to. That is my content for today. John, I will check in with you to see if any questions come in the chat.
No, but I do not believe the chat function is working. It doesn't seem to be active. However, the Q&A option is available. So I want to give attendees the option, if they have a question, to use the Q&A menu button at the top, and there you can type in a question. I do not think the chat is actually working right now. Maybe I should clarify that. It may be working for only some people, but not others. Okay, I do see that some folks are seeing it. I don't have the option myself of adding something to the chat, and that's why I was suggesting you can use the Q&A tool if you do have a question.
I do see a hand up from a Ray Weber that you guys may want to address.
Ray, Aaron, I don't know if you can unmute Ray, or if Ray, you can type your question into the Q&A feature.
I was able to be unmuted. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, the question I have is, when you're in the drought, the mandatory drought stages, is there any kind of punitive damage against violators, or how does that happen? Because, you know, I've lived in areas where they really didn't care that they were in a drought situation and that they were in a mandatory situation, and the county or the water system did not penalize them. I just didn't know what happens at that point, and I've not experienced it here.
Yeah, that's a great question, Ray. The last time we were moving towards those was in 2015, and at that time, I was actually overseeing Charlotte Water's drought task force. So as soon as we start to move into voluntary and mandatory, Charlotte Water kind of circles the wagons. We create a task force internally so that we can coordinate within the department, also with our city and our county partners. And yes, what happens is enforcement. One of the reasons why our water shortage management plan is also in lockstep with our ordinance is because our ordinance allows us to enforce those mandatory actions with penalties. There are fines associated with water use. So when we move into restrictions, we communicate that to the customers. We use the media, press releases, social media to get that out there so that folks are aware that, yes, we can, in fact, fine them. It shows up on their water bill.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And I think Edgar Miller had a question. Aaron, are you able to unmute Edgar?
Yes, Edgar, go ahead.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Thank you, John. Yeah, great presentation, Jennifer. Very interesting, and particularly discussing the recycled and the reclaimed water. Do you see a large potential for that in the future? What's your sense of the growth in that use of those two technologies?
I think that you know, we had a reclaimed water program. It's dependent on the customers and the customer base that you have, and so it actually was down for a few years and restarted in 2024 depending on the customers. We're excited about reclaimed water. We're really excited about the QC water as well. We're still learning, But one of the things that we found when we did this Renew Brew and when we started the reclaimed water up at the university area is that starting these things as pilots gets the conversation going. It allows people to start thinking about other ways reclaimed and recycled water can be used. We've had so many people come out of the woodwork interested in talking about what the potential is. So I personally am very excited about both of these programs. I think having these kind of pilot programs there kind of gets the wheels turning to think about what potential is out there.
Jennifer, I'd like to add to that. Edgar, the answer is yes. What I see in the future for Charlotte Water is that we will be doing more of it. What Jennifer referenced in the university area is the Tradition Golf Course and the partnership that we have with UNCC. And so they are going to irrigate using reclaimed or reused water reuse, just depending on where you are in the industry. UNC Charlotte, and UNC Charlotte came to the table with a significant amount of funding. So what I see is that distribution, because it's part of it is distribution. How do you put the distribution network in place? And so what I see is that as time goes on, that we cultivate more customers who are near those lines, and then we really can distribute it like it's a drinking water product, for the utility. Our business office, and I think it was last year, came up with a reuse rate. So we're already putting things in place within the utility to be able to offer this to folks in our community as time goes on. So I really appreciate that question, because I think as we look at, well, how do we use water in our community, utilities like Charlotte and other utilities in North Carolina need to look at the different uses and how we can provide that to our communities.
Yes, thank you. And I think there is a great potential there. Reynolds American here is doing a 60 million gallon a year water hub reuse reclaimed in their Tobaccoville factory. But so I guess I'm curious, Jennifer, in terms of the impact of the proposed IBT on the LIP. Is there a connection there? That may be, for a future discussion, but how will that impact your implementation of the LIP?
Yeah, I think you're right, Edgar. I think that is something that we need to talk about, and we can have a conversation maybe when we get back all together. Those are the kinds of things that we're looking at, those kinds of connections.
Yeah, and then the last question, just from a water quality standpoint, you mentioned the flushing of the lines. What are the water quality concerns that require you all to do that? Bacteria or other things, sediment, turbidity?
It's the trihalomethanes, so THMs. That's predominantly it. Those can build up over time in the distribution system, and those are regulatory. There's a regulatory water quality standard for THMs. So if the water particularly in the summer, if the water gets too stagnant, those can build up, and that's really where we need that flushing to happen. There is also, making sure that we have good chlorine residuals at the end of the system as well.
I think Cindy Beam had a question. Aaron, if you can allow Cindy to unmute herself.
Yes, Cindy should have microphone access.
Okay. Cindy, if you have microphone access and you want to speak your question.
Can you hear me?
Hi, Cindy.
Yes,
we hear you.
Hi. Okay. That was a very good presentation, Jennifer. Thank you for that. I guess I have two questions after listening to the last gentleman talking about the flushing. is the water recaptured after flushing?
Not at this time. What we try to do is direct it to a nearby creek, a nearby stream. But I will say that there's a lot of optimization going on within Charlotte Water right now, and that is one of the reasons why we do have the auto flushers, is to make sure that we are only using them for the time frame that we need.
Okay. My main question was about when we're in drought conditions. You were talking about during extreme or exceptional drought conditions, what happens. That seems to be sort of reactive to me. In order to be proactive, could we look at doing something during moderate drought, since most of the state stays in a moderate drought situation?
So that the word moderate drought and what you're talking about is the drought monitor, and that is incorporated into this. You're right. As we move into those different drought monitoring stages, that is considered as one of the triggers for the low inflow protocol. But I think those kind of conversations, we can continue to talk through the stakeholder advisory group process too.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Jennifer, Don had a question in the chat. His question was, are there any standard metrics that water utilities use to measure conservation? Something like gallons per capita. We'd be interested to know how Charlotte Water and its users stack up to other utilities communities in the U.S.
You know, I don't have that information in front of me today, but I think what we can do is make a note of that so that I can bring that back to the stakeholder advisory group.
Sure. All right.
It's a great question.
And then Ken Koth had a question. Aaron, if you can allow Ken access to his mic.
Can you hear me?
We
Hi,
can.
Ken. The question was about the cost structure for water. You mentioned having a separate meter for irrigation. Is the cost of water for irrigation and the cost of just regular potable water the same, or is there a difference there?
Irrigation meters have different, the cost is still the same, the volumetric, but they have different, if I remember correctly, the irrigation meter is capped. I'm wondering if anyone else from Charlotte Water remembers that, the irrigation meter. I think what happens is it starts at tier 3. Maybe it's not capped, it starts at tier 3, but it's the same volumetric unit price. Let me get that information back to you so I'm not giving you the incorrect info. But irrigation meters are required for irrigation systems that are installed today, and there is a pricing protocol for irrigation meters. So let me make sure I have that, and I'll bring that to you at the next stakeholder advisory group.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Are there any more questions for Jennifer? Okay, well, seeing or hearing none, I want to thank everybody for attending. Again, just a reminder, our next webinar will be Tuesday, March 25th. That'll be Tammy Steyer from Duke Energy. We will be posting a recording of this webinar to the Charlotte IBT website sometime in the next day or two, correct, Jennifer?
That's correct.
Yep. And otherwise, I appreciate everybody's attendance and participation today. Thank you very much.